I want to see,
Hello, everyone. This is another session, I would say almost 6th or 7th session in our Global Academy of Conscious Politics on a summer cycle that is going to end in the middle of October. And I'm so happy that we are in a final phase focusing on the practical implications. So from lobbying, we are moving to how to put that everything into more practical angle and how to play a bigger game. Bigger game, it means how to play the bigger game with what you do, even if you are in politics, even if you are in a public, or even if you are running your small entrepreneurship or NGO, or even if you are employed by any state institution. And I'm so happy that we are together today with our amazing mentor and my friend and GFU woman, Deborah Harris. And Deborah is an unstoppable entrepreneur, Australian, who founded the business Grow CFO that used to help only firstly to businesses to set up somehow their financial cash flows, but it has outgrown that scale a lot because she really started to focus on an impact, on social impact, on how to make the impact from all these financial flows and how to also help the companies, and not only companies, but entrepreneurs and their stakeholders to think with the societal, with the social responsibility and societal impact. Deborah, I'm so happy we are today with you. It's like 5:30 in Australia and it's 9 a.m. in Europe. Johan, welcome. And it's also welcome to Victoria and also to Maros and also to Christina. Christina is in Bolivia and it's 4 a.m. so she might join us later. And this is Playing a Bigger Game with Deborah Harris. So Deborah, the floor is yours and I'm happy we can share it with you.
Thanks so much, Andrea, and hello, Johan, and the others that are going to join this call in a little while. I'm really super delighted to be speaking to you today, but we're going to start the session not with me, but with you. So I would love for you to introduce yourself, and I'd love it to take this form. I would love to hear your name, how you add value to the world, so what you do for work and play, and what your biggest intention is for what you want to get out of the next bit of time that we're together. So Andrea, I think we might start with you. If you just introduce yourself and we'll start that way.
All right, thank you. So my name is Andrea Titelova, and my value to the world is that I really stand for conscious politics, which means I try to prepare and create a space for people who want to do it differently in politics with Global Academy, conscious politics, and also I stand for a feminine world and feminine voice in politics and public, which means I'm a part of Global Institute of Evolving Women, where I'm future constellation leader and a founder of Global Impact Platform on Conscious Politics. And that also adds value to everyone who wants to shape how to develop politics further, how to connect with people who have an impact, and how to maybe connect business and also this public sphere together. And the third question, my biggest intention.
Oops, did she freeze? Or is she still thinking? I think she froze. I think she froze. We might go on to you then, Johan, if you want to tell me a little bit about yourself until she unfreezes and comes back to us.
Yes, there's a big noise behind me. Can you hear me though?
Yes, I can't hear the noise behind. I can only hear you.
So we'll do our best. We'll do our best. I don't know what my biggest intention is yet, but so my name is Johan Thériault. So I'm French. I'm French-Polish. I'm calling from Poland now. Sorry, I'm in Romania right now, but I live in Poland. And I work for the French Parliament, for a French member of Parliament. And since a few months, before I was for the French Embassy. And it connects with how I want to add value to the world, because I was always passionate about politics and public institutions and general interest. Not so much in party politics or how to get the power, but more in a way of what is the best plan for the people? What is the best to do? It's also politics, but it's more this maybe civil service or I don't know, constitutional part.
Right. Thank
I
you.
hope that you can still hear me. So I don't know
Yep,
what my biggest intention is, but among my intentions, I want to know the world, hence my interest for international relations. I want to be useful to the world without, there is so much suffering, so without inflicting more suffering, if I can, and do things that are passionate, that are new, that are fresh. These are some of my intentions. I don't know what my biggest intention is.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And welcome back, Andrea. I know that there must have been a technical issue. Have we got you now? Oh, frozen again. That's okay. We'll keep
Yeah,
going.
I'm here. I hope it works. No, I will switch to that.
So we didn't hear what your biggest intention was, Andrea. That's okay. We might move on. So
Yeah. I can hear you.
We've got you back again. Okay. So the third thing this next thing that I would love to invite you to do while we're having this particular conversation is that we typically tend to take notes for ourselves and think about what we're gaining for ourselves. But I'd love for you to think about what you might gain for another participant, what you would like to have as a takeaway, something that another participant might find valuable, and also what you might be able to take away for Andrea for actually creating this space and some way that you think that you may be able to provide insight or assistance for her. So that would be my intention, is that we actually have this contract amongst us that we're going to actively listen and work out what we might be able to think of as takeaways for each other. So this is a little bit about me. I'm actually a mother of
takeaways for each other, and what can enrich.
Sorry?
Takeaways from each other and how we can enrich each other, right?
Correct. If I speak too much Australian, just tell me and I'll try to reframe it for you. So this is a little bit about me, and the reason I've chosen these things to tell you about me is that these are the things that have led me to be in the journey that I'm currently on and wanting to make a difference in our world. So I have 5 young adults that are my children and our children. They range in age from 24 down to 16. And I wondered whether they would have a bright, shiny future. And I've been married for not quite 28 years, very close to 28 years. And I wondered what the journey would look like for myself and my husband to influence not just our children, but what we could do that would influence the families everywhere. I'm a 3 times best-selling author, and I don't know, have you heard of Simon Sinek?
Of what?
Simon Sinek, he's an author who created Start With Why. Yeah, he's now at number 2. And our collaborative book actually took over his book, Start With Why, in 48 hours. And in the category of business ethics. So we're very intentional about what we do and how we go about doing it. I'm a master trainer for Entrepreneurs Institute, so I spend a lot of time learning about entrepreneurial ways of thinking and how we can put those into practice. And that led me to win an International Entrepreneur Award, which I didn't know I was getting, and was dressed in a giant inflatable sumo suit at the time. Big blow up, looked like a sumo wrestler. And my company's name is the Grow CFO Co. And we specifically provide strategic financial advice to fast growth social entrepreneurial businesses that are doing more in our world, either through their products and services or through their philanthropy. So we have a very specific niche about who we go about helping, and that's designed to help around the whole United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and actually getting those things to work in our world that are not currently working and have been identified as our biggest problems. So that's just a little bit of the context and how I'm speaking to you today. So I'm just going to go through, this is the four basic topics that I'm going to cover today. I'm going to talk about the 10 pillars of government and what the role of policy is in progressing our world. Then I'll talk about the 3 keys of philanthropy and around the art of giving. So from a philanthropic background and from being a philanthropreneur, how I see philanthropy fitting into that. Then I'll discuss how we play a bigger world game, how we can gamify that in such a way that our businesses can improve the value of what's happening. And along that way, I'll talk about the role of government and how that impacts business being able to do that. And then I'll share with you my business model so you can see how we design a business model that puts philanthropy at the core and enables us to sustain our business, to grow our business, and to give as the core part of our business. And I'll bring it all together at the end and show you how it goes through a whole process of the whole idea of United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 17, which is partnership for the goals, and how the partnership of government, philanthropy, and business is so vital to that. So I'm going to launch now into the first of the pillars, which is the pillars of government. And the first couple of pillars are about representing the people. So the role of government is to have elections so that people can have a voice about who represents them in the global context of where they have their voice. So the first pillar of setting up good government is to have democratically held elections where every person who's able to vote, or every person is entitled to vote, and the elections are fair and representative of the intentions of the people. And then the second pillar of representing the people is actually in foreign affairs. And Johan, you expressed that you've been very actively involved in the foreign affairs and foreign diplomacy side of things. So it's not just about representing the people at home and their interests, it's representing the people abroad. So that's the second pillar of government that we see as being vital to how good government happens. The next set of pillars really are about providing care in the current context. So how do we provide care? Oh, that's a very interesting spelling of services. I'll fix that for you before I send those out to you. And Andrea, I'll actually fix that type of spelling mistake. And so the next set of pillars are really about how do we provide care for people who are currently our constituents, you know, the ones who are currently alive in our global context, in our environment right now. And we start that by providing public services for people. So that can be anything from hospitals, education, transportation, you name it. Those sorts of services that the government actually funds are part of the pillars of government. And the next one in that same situation is around social welfare and making sure that people don't fall below the poverty line, and those who have fallen below the poverty line have a safety net and are cared for, so that we're actually caring for everybody in our environment right now who are part of the government, the active constituents of this government. Whether they're able to vote or whether they are able to care for themselves or not, this can include people who have disabilities, aged people, people who don't have an address. Sometimes our system of elections means that you have to have a registered address, and yet if you are homeless, you can't actually be a participant in an election because you have no registered address. So it's not, you're not adequately representing the people if the people have to have a home in order to vote, and they have no home because they're poor. So this is one of the trade-offs that we see with most governments around the world, is that when someone falls below that poverty line, very often they're no longer represented. And then the next set of pillars are really around providing for the future. And the first one of those is economic growth. How do we actually create an economy, and not just a government economy, but a business economy that enables businesses to grow and thrive and provide more jobs for more people, and continue the work, continue the growth and development, the technology growth, the financial growth, and particularly providing fair and adequate compensation to people for the time and effort and labour that they put into things, as well as doing that for businesses. So there's a trade-off there between private enterprise, the labour rights of people, and making sure that the economic growth is sustainable into the future. The next pillar that's about the future is to prevent future poverty. So we've got social welfare. Oh, we've lost Johan. The future, we prevent social welfare at the moment provides care for people who are currently in our context, but we prevent future poverty by our social systems. And then our third or our final set of, oops, sorry, I went backwards.
Sorry, I'm back.
That's okay. Nice to see you back. So I just capped on the preventing future poverty is part of providing, is the third pillar of providing for the future. And our last set of provisions are around protecting the rights and freedoms. And these build in terms of who they're actually protecting. So civil liberties protects an individual's right to have a voice and to have freedom and to have our own rights acknowledged. And then we have the rights of a group of people. So we have justice, so the rights of one in the context of how they're influencing the rights of somebody else in that environment. Then we have domestic order. So this is where we have making sure that there's not civil unrest within a country. And then our final pillar in protecting rights and freedom is actually our military defence, which we protect our borders against people who would take away the rights and freedoms of our country. So these are the 10 pillars that actually represent good government. And we very often find that government puts money into one over another, and it means that we might be putting more money into protecting rights and freedoms, but we're not putting enough into providing for the future or providing current care for people. So this is where we have this lovely balancing act that governments have to do to make sure that there's stable economic growth, that there's provision for the future as well as care for the current, and that all peoples are adequately represented within their constituencies. So this is how I see the 10 pillars of government, and there's lots of different reading and context around this. There's people who say 7 pillars, 8 pillars, 2 pillars, 3 pillars. But these are the 10 that I would argue are the things that are making the most sense to me right now. And this may change in the future for me as other things come up. So how do those 10 pillars of government actually support philanthropy? So that's what I'm going to move into now, that understanding those 10 pillars, what does that do when we talk about philanthropy? And it's important to understand that what I see the role of government, business and philanthropists doing is actually taking care of these 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There's 169 targets for the goals and there's 230 indicators. Those are the actual specific numbers that we're supposed to reach to actually make our the world work for 100% of humanity and not cause environmental offence. So there's things like affordable and clean energy. So let's just pick out a couple of these. For example, governments can really take care of good health and well-being through what they do with public hospital systems and public health care, but very often they can't provide adequately for the whole healthcare needs of the community. And so we see that there's private healthcare practitioners that come in and also provide services in that space. So how do we make sure that the private healthcare, whether they're private hospitals, whether they're specialists, whether they're doctors, how do we make sure that the good health and well-being of all people is covered? How do we make sure the good health and well-being of people in a third world context is being covered? So philanthropists tend to go in and help out in those spaces where good health and well-being is not something that government is either able to financially manage in their world, or whether they choose not to financially manage it. And we find that private entities also go into some of those spaces and pick up the gap where there's additional services that can be supplied. So this is where we have business, government and philanthropy working together. And philanthropy can include NGOs, but it can also include philanthropic individuals and businesses. In another example, decent work and economic growth, for example, if you have a strong public sector that's providing decent work and economic growth, that would look something like lots of road projects so that people could access work in building and maintaining road systems and infrastructure. It may be that in that same context, if you've got a philanthropist working in that, they may actually be teaching people how to create their own micro business. And if you've got that in the context of business in an environment, it may be that they're developing their own business to provide more opportunities for locals. So this is where we work hand in hand between the three levels: government, business and philanthropy. So the way I see that, the way I see those four pillars, the four categories of pillars, is that number one, the first category is representation, that we should be representing without prejudice. So people who are being governed, whether they're part of a minority community, part of a female population who may not have a voice because they are female, part of a community who maybe don't have a home so they don't have a voice, that we actually provide representation without prejudice. The second group of pillars was around providing care for the current population and environment. And that's really making sure that we look at how we actually treat the people right now. Are we taxing them too much for them to actually be able to care for themselves? Are we taxing them too little, though, that we're not managing the future? Because we have to manage not only the population, but we have to manage the environment that they're in. We need to make sure that we're not destroying the oceans and the air and the land integrity, so that there's resources available for future generations. And we also need to make sure that we're not violating the human rights of our individuals. So this whole protection and safety comes about. Sometimes we put in trade embargoes. Sometimes we make sure that there's protections for industries in countries where they could be massively decimated by cheap imports coming into their country. And it doesn't enable their businesses to grow and thrive and support the local communities and workforce that need to grow and thrive with them. So that takes me to the, oops, my little slide's gone. These are the three keys of philanthropy. Sorry, my little word's gone missing. And the three keys to philanthropy are the way I see philanthropy. So once again, this is open to interpretation from others, but this is how I see philanthropy. The first key is obviously physical resources. Now, we all think of philanthropy as being about what we give. And that doesn't necessarily have to be just money. It can also be the physical resources of giving, say a group of people need a cement mixer to do what they need to do, and you might have a cement mixer supply company. You would be able to donate the cement mixer rather than the actual funds for the cement mixer. So it's physical resources isn't restricted just to cash. It's also the physical assets that we can have that we can add into that. But I argue that there's actually two other points of to philanthropy as well. And the next one is our time and intention. How do we as people shine a light on the situation of others? So there's a couple of ways that we can share time and attention. It can be through just going, and you possibly all know people who go and volunteer at places. That's giving our time. But maybe less known is the fact that we can actually pick up on the needs of others and speak about it actively in public. So in the context of a platform for global politics, time and attention is possibly an even more fundamental key that becomes part of this, because it's really about the intention of speaking that enables us to make the most massive difference we can in the world. And the third key that I see of philanthropy is actually our knowledge. So when we share our knowledge about what's happening, and when we share our knowledge of how we've done things ourselves that might work in a third world context, then those people are getting an understanding. We're able to give them, say, an understanding that comes from a first world and take it through to a third world situation and give them the benefit of speeding up what they're doing. So when we speed up what they're doing, they're able to more quickly pull themselves out of poverty. So that's what I see as the three keys to philanthropy. And I see that the three keys of philanthropy actually unlock the world game. So this is where I'm going to go a little bit left field here. Now, the world game is not soccer. The soccer ball is representative because it's the biggest game that's played across the world, or football you may call it. Do you know who this is? Do you know who this is? Have you heard of Buckminster Fuller? Ah, okay, Buckminster Fuller. This is Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fuller was an architect, a philosopher, an amazing inventor and creator. And in the 1960s, he came up with the concept of the world peace game. He maintained that we could all live in peace and we could solve the biggest problems of humanity. So this, I think, leads really nicely into thinking about, well, if you were playing this world peace game as an actual game, imagine you were playing this as a game where you were a player in a game. What are the elements of great games? And when I did some research, I came up with these 8 things. These are the 8 elements of great games. So I'm going to start with an interesting theme. So Buckminster Fuller has this amazing theme for the world game. He says that he wants to make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time through spontaneous cooperation without ecological offence or the disadvantage of anyone. So I happen to think that that's a pretty good and motivating reason for creating some space where we can work together across borders, across boundaries, in business, out of business, in politics, as philanthropists. We can actually bring people together to play this game. And so I think that, yes, we've ticked off that it has an interesting theme. And this is Buckminster Fuller's idea of our world. And he found that if you pulled apart a map of the world, it looked like you could just step from continent to continent to continent to continent, and that really there wasn't any real breaks between our continents, so that we're actually just all part of the one place in space. So this is, he calls it his Dymaxion map. And so this is what I would argue has some of the most beautiful worlds that we could possibly imagine exist within this map. We have the red earth of Australia. We have the volcanic activity of New Zealand. We have the beautiful animals in Africa. We have Machu Picchu in South America. We have the Grand Canyon. And we have the amazing areas that stretch across Europe, India, and Asia. So all of those beautiful countries that you think of now this is, to me, one of the most compelling reasons why we should be looking on our Earth as having those interesting lands in which we play. So I know when my kids play these computer games, they always have these fantastic and captivating worlds. And I would say our world is probably the most captivating of all. The next thing we need are the rules and objectives of the game. So we need to know what we're playing and why we're playing it and how we're playing it. And I would argue that the United Nations very clearly put out these 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that are our rules for the game. This is why we're playing. And they're very, very specific. They categorize them into these beautiful 17 categories, and we can really clearly see it's no poverty and quality education and so forth. So I think that, yeah, we've actually covered off that there's some rules and objectives here that we know what we've got to achieve in this game to make it happen. Think of those as your levels in a game. You know, you have to move from level to level in a game to be successful. That's what I think our rules and objectives are. So there also needs to be challenge and reward. You know, you need to feel like you're actually being successful in achieving all these levels. And so they did break up the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals have 169 targets. And the targets are very specific. We'll know when we've actually achieved them. They're very, very specific. And they actually have measurable indicators underneath them. It's actually 244, I think, measurable indicators, but some of them are like a bonus round because they actually are the indicators for more than one goal. So, and it's things like the percentage of the population who are still being infected with malaria. They have a very specific target. And so these become, you know, when we talk about decent work and economic growth and we hear people saying there's no jobs, these are the 17 biggest problems of the world and we haven't solved them. So there's still ways people can add value to the world. They just have to think about these things as being their job. And somewhere, someone does pay for these. So it's worth paying attention to these because these are the spaces where if we can provide value in these areas, we know there's going to be income generated because of them. And it may not be from the people who are currently in poverty, but it may be from the people who are trying to create industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So I would say that, yes, there's challenge and reward, so we can give that one a tick. Now, the next one is a little bit, I'm going to cover off on two at once. And this is, I like to think of myself as I'm a player in this game. I don't want to be an observer. I don't want to be outside this game. So this is my player avatar. This is me. This is how I play the game. I show up as me. And there's other people around the world who show up as them. So this is the team of people that we're going to play this world game with, and they cover every ethnicity, every race, every continent, every country, every social belief set, every religious belief set. These are the people who are playing the world game with us. And a great game needs to have time pressure. You need to know when you've got to get it done by. So I don't know whether you've heard of Moore's Law or singularity, technological singularity, or the 2030 deadline of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations decided that they needed to have people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership by 2030. And that's not really a surprise because if you understand Moore's Law, so why 2030? Well, Moore's Law says that technology doubles in its capacity every 18 months. Now, whether or not you believe in Moore's Law or not, at the end of around about 2040, we should see the point where Moore's Law creates technology that reaches the point of singularity. Now, singularity is when machine intelligence surpasses human intelligence. And so my argument is that if we haven't actually got ourselves sorted out by then, it may be that computers decide that we're obsolete, that we're the ones causing the problems. So we've got this 2030 deadline that happens well ahead of Moore's Law's deadline. And we can actually make this work if we're compelling enough in our language and articulate enough to get other people actively working on our side, which is really the whole purpose of politics and philanthropy and should be the purpose of business. So that's how I see Moore's Law, singularity, and the 2030 deadline influencing our timeline for this game. So I would say, yes, there's great time pressure here. And then the next thing I would say is that every game needs great visuals. So you need to really know what you're looking for in a game, and you need to be inspired by the vision. So I'm just going to show you a series of slides here that I find compelling to make an impact on me. So when we think of hunger, should people be sitting on the streets not eating? Should birds in remote parts of the world be in danger of extinction from deforestation? Should children have to carry buckets of water on their heads in order to have clean drinking water? Should people in remote communities still have access to life-saving healthcare? Should children in Cambodia be able to read a book in their own language and carry the language forward into the future? So I would say that we can create compelling visuals around this. We can create the compelling stories that make people understand that we can actually play this as a game. It can actually be fun to do more in our world. So how does this world game impact our business? So I'm going to go into our business model and share that with you. This is the business model I share with all of our clients so they understand where we're coming from, and I help them create and craft their own business model that equally has philanthropy at its core. So this is our model for innovation, and our target is to really think outside the box about how we go about making a big impact in our world. And we start with philanthropy as our core value. How can we do more with less? So, oops, my image has disappeared. Here we go. Right. So this is my basic model. I provide 10% for marketing, 10% of sales. This is proportion of revenue. We use 50% of our revenue to deliver our services, which provides, so those top three provide opportunity for others. We have opportunity for people to join our marketing team. We have opportunity for them to gain revenue from doing our sales. We have opportunity for them to gain revenue from delivering our services on our behalf. And then we have the two things that are focused on us being able to provide grow a sustainable business. The first one is growth. So we always put 10% back into our business to enable us to have funds to grow. We have our return on investment for us as shareholders is 10%. And the reason that's lemon meringue pie is because it's my favorite dessert. No other reason. And those two, growth and return on investment, are actually our taxable component. In Australia, we have 30% tax on our profits for business. And so 30% of 20% represents our tax. Different countries have different taxable models, but that's our taxable model. So it pays us to know how much the government is going to take out of it. And you can see that the government is responsible then for a significant proportion of what we generate as our revenue. We also have what we call our C-suite. So they're our executive team, our management team, and we want to make sure that as we grow our business, that we're paying them for their expertise and we're growing our management across different industry sections. But the one that really we focus on is this last 1%, which is our level of philanthropy. And you can see that we consider the philanthropy as the whole cake, not just a part of the pie. It's actually a whole cake. Oops, sorry. I'll just stop my share for the moment. I just clicked the wrong button. Okay, sorry, excuse me while I just fiddle around with this. done something very strange and it's gone right back to the beginning. So
But
I'm just going to zoom through and see if I can get down to the right slide, and I'll show it in PDF. My apologies.
I love the slides of the cakes, and if you have any questions, also Johan, or we can go through them before, like in the meantime, Deborah will set up the rest. But I didn't know that there is such taxation, but I love it.
I always like to do slides because it's far more interesting to see slides than to just have someone as a talking head. So I'm sorry, this won't be perfect with the slides, but so this is what it actually looks like. This is my pie chart that I show to people because a lot of people get freaked out by numbers, but this is how we look at it. We actually prioritize our philanthropy. We decide what our philanthropy targets are going to be first. So if we want to make 100 million impacts, we decide how much those 100 million impacts are going to cost us, and then we set our revenue targets. And we know what our sales and marketing objectives are going to be and what our sales and marketing expenses are going to be. And we build it all backwards that way. So over 5 years, we know exactly what we're going to do quarter on quarter. And this is how we actually help some of those other businesses make a difference. But that would only be part of the puzzle. We can actually leverage our impact. And what I mean by leveraging our impact is it's not just about what we're doing for us, but as a business that works with other social entrepreneurs and other businesses that are doing more for our world, how do we actually leverage what we're doing further? So we decided that the way we would do it is by choosing amazing companies like this one that we're working with at the moment. The guys from Ag Unity are actually placing microfinance solutions in forms of technology on cheap handset into fisher and farming communities that enable banks and crop insurers and others to have trust in the provision of services. Now, I'll give you an example of this. Say a farmer in Ethiopia takes his 3 bags of coffee beans to market and he expects to get $30, or he speaks to the supplier in the markets and he's got 3 bags and he expects to get $30 for a bag. Coffee is an annual crop. So that would give him a $90 annual crop for the year. That's his income for the year is $90. So we're talking about people who are well below the poverty line. They go to their local market, they give over their 3 bags of beans. Next week they come back for payment. And the person in the marketplace said, no, you only gave me 2 bags and they're only worth $20. Now you've taken his annual income from $90 down to $40. So this is the solution. This is the situation that many people are facing on the face of the earth. So these guys at Ag Unity have created the technology to enable blockchain on a very cheap handset. Philanthropists are supporting them by providing the handsets. Well, banks are supporting them by helping them fund some of their development and their builds. And so they're actually securing the supply chain and the value chain all the way through. And they're very focused on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and making sure that the philanthropists and the companies who are focused on that are the ones that they're trading with and dealing with. So this is one of the ways that we actually leverage the impact we make, because not only are we giving, but we're choosing companies to work with who are also making sure that they're doing massive change in our world. So keep going down, please. Oh, now I've gone too far. Okay. So we make our own impacts using 1% of our revenue and, oh, sorry, come on. It's a little sensitive. We make our own impacts using 1% of our revenue, but we also have an investment policy that we invest in the customers who are making impacts. We invest our time and attention, we invest our knowledge, and we invest also our physical resources. So we have a policy where we, with some of our companies that we're working with, we actually physically invest our own savings in those companies to help make a bigger impact faster. recently been going through a whole round of other funding and pulling together other investors in those spaces to do the same thing. And we share our stories. I haven't touched so much on B1G1, buy one, give one, but we have a philanthropy platform that we use that enables us to do micro giving. And that enables us to share our stories, our customers' stories, and the stories of some of the projects, and give time and attention and air what they do. So for example, talking about Ag Unity and what they're currently doing gives them the time and attention that can help lift their business. Then we also have our knowledge philanthropy. I'm struggling to get it to scroll. Okay, where we grow our businesses and we grow the projects using our knowledge, and we grow our customers. And so we grow our own business, but we also grow our customers' business. This is getting scatty now. Sorry. So here's some takeaways that I could suggest for you out of those 4 sections. Is that the 10 pillars of government cover 4 key areas. It's about representing the people, caring for the future, and protecting the rights of all people. 3 keys to philanthropy about resources, time and attention, and knowledge. And that if we want to play a bigger game, then we need to collaborate, make it fun, and leave no one behind. And if we put philanthropy at the core of what we do, we should be able to have sustainable growth. We should be able to create opportunity for others. We should have a philanthropic model in which we do business, and we should be looking always to leverage the impact we make, whether that's in government or in business or just as philanthropists. So I'm keen to hear, what are your takeaways? What did you get out of this that you would like to pass on to others who may not be on this call right now? Let me scroll to...
So you're right, this is something you think every business could do, at least every legal business could become in that way a philanthropic, a social business, right?
Correct. Yes, correct. There's no reason not to. And even as an employee in a business, if you're focused on if you're working for the businesses that are making a bigger difference, then just by going to work, you're making a bigger difference. So it's not just about business, it's really about how we think about doing more for the world. So are we looking at business as an avenue for just raising funds for ourselves, or are we looking at business as being a problem solver for the world's biggest problems? So Andrea, what do you think your main takeaways have been so far out of this? You're on mute.
For me, there were 3 things. One was the keys of the philanthropy. I never thought that at the time it's knowledge and it's resources and how people can think about that. And it comes in my mind a book that was written about philanthropy and philanthropists, and it's called like Winemakers or something like that. That was an audible book presented by the US philanthropists that used to donate a lot. And I was listening to that, and I remember I was stuck because it was all about money and foundations, you know, who pumped where, I would say so, and who supported what. And it was very the American model, and the way that they just create a foundation, then they leverage money to very stable institutions, and that's it. And I just very got present that you are philanthropists because of your time and knowledge, because you give so much to Academy and to us, and that's so much in that. So I love this. I love the pillars that you showed about social justice, military, democracy, and how they are the pillars of the state. And I love my takeaway is also that sustainable development goals, which we need to focus on, and how we need to implement the actions we want to go to reach those goals, especially when you spoke about hunger in the streets, and also maybe the pictures and visualizations that you showed with the Buckminster Fuller were very strong for me. And 2 other things, singularity and human consciousness. I think that yesterday I was listening to an interview with one of the billionaires in Czech Republic, who is an inventor of a new electoral method in Czech Republic. He was our speaker at a conference last year. And he was speaking about singularity, and he was speaking really about if the human consciousness gets the point of singularity, so one singular approach to the politics or to the foundation, because he's also founder of many foundations against corruption, you know, supporting generosity. I got like, wow, it's much more better or much more higher than just technology by itself, because we already have technology perfectly sorted out. And the last was these cakes. And I think it's because of the cakes on the slide. But also, I love the analogy that you put 10% of the philanthropy that you need really, or you want to deduct from your incomes, from your profits, and you put the biggest cake on that picture. I don't know if it was like on purpose, but I love it because all of it are just slices, and there was a whole tart, a chocolate tart. And it's a big symbol because it's also in a mindset, and the cakes are well memorable because people love cakes, many people, majority, and I love it. That is an expression of, yeah, this is how you contribute the most. And yeah, it's connected for me with Heaven on Earth webinar we had yesterday with Martin Ruud in GFU, where he shared the Heaven on Earth of one of his clients who brought it to her property business and decided to combat the homelessness and decided to invest every single $100 from every single property real estate contract to building some shelters over the years and engage stakeholders who would then help it to build it. And over 3 years or 4 years, she has collected $400,000 already. So they already built those shelters. And that's also for me that big tart, like, you know, so thank you. Like it was like interesting how we visualize the things we can do.
Yeah, I think that that's really key to it, to be honest, is that if you can make it as simple as possible for people to follow why you're doing what you're doing, then it makes sense to people, and then they can see an opportunity for themselves to step into what they can do. We sometimes make things so hard. We think we need to have thousands and thousands of dollars. But just to put this in the context of, I'll share with you about Buy One, Give One. Buy One, Give One is a platform that was created to enable smaller businesses to make impacts through doing projects that start at 1 cent US. All of the funds go through to the project. So if you're donating 1 cent, 1 cent goes through. There's businesses that manage all the transaction costs and so forth, and that their contribution is to pay for all those costs. At the start of this year, it took about 10 years for them to, and they measure everything in impacts, not dollars. So at the start of this year, they had reached 160 million impacts. It took them 10 years to get to the first 100 million. Within this last year, we're now, I think at the moment, we're at 190 something million. So the second 100 million will actually happen in the space of this year. So we're anticipating at that growth rate that the third 100 million impacts, and to give you some examples, it's a cent a day can give water to a child in a community. So a child can have fresh drinking water in a community for 1 cent per day. So this kind of model goes out and extends out so that as more and more businesses are coming on, and there's small businesses linking their revenue raising activities to micro giving. And so they may not be earning a fortune, but just through the regularity of their contribution and being mindful of their contribution and being conscious of their contribution, they're making significant impacts in the world. And that's what led Masami Sato, who's the founder and creator of Buy One, Give One, to end up having as the, who led us to have the 3 books that have become bestsellers, to be able to speak to people like Paul Polman, who's the CEO, was the ex-CEO of Unilever and is now part of the International Chamber of Commerce. It's been able to go wider to Virgin Unite, which is Richard Branson's charity arm, and being able to really leverage out through those networks has really accelerated that movement. So now we have all levels of business able to make a contribution, not just really big business with corporate social responsibility policies, but smaller businesses who want to have some say in what happens.
May I give a little, if you can give me a little maybe feedback? And is it okay if I might maybe leave in 5 minutes? I'm very sorry about that.
No problem
We are going to
whatsoever.
finish. Yeah, great.
You know, some days you have a lot of time, and some days it's like everything's rushing in. And I'm sorry about that. For me, when you talk about the 10 pillars of government, it was okay, but why 10? Why not 5? Why not 12? It was like a good start, but why so much? That was interesting. But the three keys much more for me full of meaning, because I know nothing to business, but for sure in the government sector, what I see, if you want to do good, you have to give resources, but if you give already time and attention, it's already very important. It's always a first step.
Yeah.
I would say the first step is time and attention. The second step is sharing knowledge. It's absolutely essential. And some governments in the world don't have money, but if their top leaders spend time and attention, and then they share knowledge about all the good things that can be done in critical areas people don't care about, it is moving forward. It is a help. And then, of course, resources. I mean, it's still a massive help. So for me, this does not apply only to social business. It does apply to, as you say, philanthropy in general. And then for me, the piece of cakes related to your experience, that was very, very useful. That it was really, really, like you say, of your experience, and that I also like very much the idea full of hope that it's only 1%, but it's the most important, and it can make a difference. So thanks so much for that.
That's my pleasure. People usually like the cake slide. It's a pie chart. It was my little laugh. It's the pie chart. Chart full of pies. So thank you for that. And this is the way you can connect with me if you would like to. I have this QR code goes through to a booking calendar. So if you just want to speak to me on whatever, you can feel free to do that. Or you can use that email address at the bottom. And I will make these slides available to you too, Andrea. Would you like a commentary on the slides as well, a written commentary on each slide?
I think that Johan has to say, but I think if you just share the presentation, it's up to you because you also have a lot of things to do. Putting the commentaries on every slide is a lot of work, and I think anyone can contact you if we are like proactive people. So I think it's enough without the commentaries, if you don't think so. And I wanted to also ask if I can share a screenshot of this call, maybe the cake slide, with the reference that it was your slide on my Facebook and maybe Global Academy Facebook, with the reference that this is possible to experience when they join the next cycle. The campaign has not started, but I think this is such a great teaser for or maybe other parts. I've done like a free screenshot, so maybe put into the context the cake slide, or maybe more the others you've shared, because it was exciting. So if you agree.
Give me the dimensions for that slide. If you just give me the dimensions that you want, I'll give you one that's the correct dimensions for your Facebook.
Okay, cool.
No problem. Okay, well, thank you very much. I know that you have to leave. I want to thank you and acknowledge you for your time and energy that you attended this call. And Andrea, as always, it's amazing to be able to have a connection with you and to be able to provide value into your network. And good luck with everything you're doing, both of you. I know that you're going to have an amazing input into our communities, and I hold great faith that our collective desire to achieve more will make things happen across the world. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy we managed to contact between Australia and Europe. It's not.
Yeah, it's amazing. See what we can do together.
And the birds haven't even made their loud, disgusting noises. So we've managed to do this at the right time of day, because in Australia, we don't have little soft Tweety birds. We have squawkers and really loud things. Nothing eats them.
No, it was great. I really appreciate and love it.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Take care, everyone. And thank you, Deborah. Have a good day, Johan, and have a good day, Victoria, Maros. Christina and Abhishek, who I invite you to watch this. You will find it in the platform by the end of this week, all the recordings and the presentation as well. And if you can share to your networks about Global Academy, a new cycle from November, differently revised, we will be grateful. Thank you for Deborah's time, commitment. Thank you, Johan, and have a great day and great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.